Hey guys, Lou here from Jersey Shore Fabricators. Here's a follow-up video, not of the air conditioning. We're starting a new project while we're waiting for those other parts to go on because there's so much work to do on this car. If you've got an original Mustang, most likely your gauges suck. And look, it's not through anybody's fault. You know, they're 50 years old, 45 years old. It's time. Everything starts to break down a little at that 45, 50-year-old age. Ask me how I know. So, what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to start with this big hole that's in the dashboard, where the gauges used to be. We're going to take these old gauges here, and we're going to replace them with these new electronic gauges. Now, the gauges come from a company called NVU. I've never used them before. I've always used the Coded Digital. I've always had great luck with them. These are supposed to have the turn signal indicators integrated into them. And for those of you that are paying attention, you'll notice that there is no clock, as there was on the original cluster that I showed you. So to quote Will Smith, old and busted, new hotness. Old and busted, new hotness. Now the clock, not worried about. We have a brand new factory center console that's going in this. And I was able to track down an original clock on eBay, so that'll be going in there. Now, what does it take to make this all work? It's going to take a lot. It's going to take quite a bit of wiring. So first order of business is we got to come off the negative side of the tack, negative side of the coil to run a wire for the new tachometer. The other thing we got to do is replace the factory oil pressure sending switch with the one included with the kit. We got to replace the water temp sending unit with the one included from the kit. We can use the factory fuel gauge wiring and sender. The fuel gauge itself is programmable. Now, if you've worked with the older Dakota digital gauges, there's no filter on them, like, I don't know, 0 to 90 ohms, 40 to 250 ohms, GM cars, things like that. So this is programmable to whatever sender that you have. Okay. Now, the one thing the kit does not include is a vehicle speed sensor. Why doesn't this car have one? Because it's a 71 Mustang. They didn't have them back then. Now, although they tell you when you order the kit that's not included, and if you go to someplace like CJ Pony Parts, they even say on there it does not include the speedometer sensor. My customer ordered this kit because he didn't want to spend the extra $150 for the Dakota Digital. Guess what? Doesn't come with a speed sensor. Now, fortunately, on the NVU website, they do sell a 2-wire speed electronic speedometer output device sensor, whatever you want to call it, designed for Ford transmissions. You have to reuse your factory gear and your factory circlip. I think it's like $75. So I got to call a customer up, have him order that, get that shipped here. Hopefully I could have this video finish, with everything working the way it's supposed to. In the meantime, we kind of got a boatload of wiring to do here. So let me get started on that. I don't have a huge choice of wire colors. I'd love to have a full palette, as some of these guys have with, every color under the sun. I don't have it. So I'm working with what I got here. It's all 14 gauge wire. The kit recommends that you work with at least 16 gauge. All right, enough talking. Let's dive into this. All right, first order of business. If you hear any noise in the background, that is my shop heater. I'm not going to put a link in the description because I don't know how. But if you search out my channel, you'll see new shop heater, and then you'll see another video called new shop heater follow-up. So you'll see what all the noise is about. Now, on to the game. We have a coil. Got a positive side, got a negative side. Right there. The negative side is what has to go through the firewall into the car to feed the tach. We're going to use that hole right Come on. There. I do have a grommet kit coming, so we'll be able to run the wires through there through grommet and keep anything from shorting out. So one of the weirdest things you're going to do on your classic Mustang to get a digital speedometer to work is to throw out your speedometer cable, and you're going to replace it with this guy here. Now this is from NVU, New Vintage gauges, people who make the gauges. This is a Ford Hall Effect speedometer sensor. The new speedometer sensor is electronic, the other one is mechanical. So basically what happens is that you take out your cable, remove a gear and the circlip, it goes on here, this gets reinstalled back into the transmission, comes with a new mounting clip on there, comes with a wiring harness, and it comes with that much wire. And that's got to get run all the way up to the dashboard. So let's show you how that's done. Okay, so way up here under the car, on the transmission, is your speedometer cable with a bolt that holds it in. You're going to go ahead and remove that bolt. Once you do, just grab your cable, give it a tug, and out it comes. And then what you'll find is, let's see if I can maneuver my light here. Okay, so there's your speedometer gear, and then you'll also see a metal clip right here. That clip's going to come off. You're going to take that gear off and go pop it onto your new speedometer sensor. Okay, now with the clip off, all you have to do is just slide that off. It's that easy. Now let's go install it. Okay, so we're going to do the same. Okay, so installation is reverse of removal. The speedometer gear is going to get slid on there like that. And this is your circlip, okay? Some of us call this a Jesus clip, because if you lose this, you'll be praying to Jesus that you find it. So don't break it, don't force it. It came off, it'll go back on. When you look at the orientation on this, you'll see that there's a shoulder. That shoulder goes towards the back, goes towards the sending unit itself. Really, it can only go on one way. Just like that. And now we'll go reinstall it. So this is going to go back in position pretty much the same way it came out. Until it's fully seated. Okay, so when you go to put this back in, it's just going to go right back in the way it came out. Take the unit, slide it in, you'll feel it mesh with the gears. Give it a little bit of a push. Okay, maybe a little bit more than a bit of a push, but it will fully seat. You have to go, you see this little rubber O-ring here? Alright, that's got to go all the way in there. And you'll hear it click once you get it there. And of course, I already had this in, and being that I have the camera on, it wants to fight me. How groovy is that? There is no keyway. It just simply goes like that. There we go. Sometimes the simplest things, I tell you. And then, of course, don't forget to put the bolt back in, because that's going to keep everything from coming apart on you going down the road. Now, the next thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to make your own wiring harness to get from inside the car to down here. There's a couple of different ways you can go. You can go out the firewall, under the car, all that. This particular car already has a large hole in the floor for the shifter. And it's getting a factory center console, so we're just going to run a harness, bring it down. That'll be that. Now that harness is going to provide 12 volt power, the signal to the speedometer, and of course the black wire is going to be ground. And it's small 16 gauge wire. It doesn't have to be anything, too heavy duty. You don't have to go all crazy with it. When it comes to figuring out which wires are what, there's no wiring diagram that comes with your gauges. You're just going to have to figure it out. Now the easiest way I found to do it is with a test light. Put it on each port, on each tab of the factory gauge connector, and start turning things on and off until you find what you want. Now in my case, I've already gone through and started labeling things. Okay, so got my right blinker, left blinker, high beam, 12 volt switched, battery. Well, not my 12 volt switch, but my battery. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm running out of wires here. I got to find 12 volt switched, and I need to find ground. Okay? So knowing that usually red is going to be some kind of power, I put my test light in there, and turn the key on. The test light comes on. Turn it off, it goes off. And we know it's going to be a switched on because when I start the car, it still stays on. So we know we'll have power, or at least have a volt gauge out of that one. So you do that through all your wires. Every car is going to be a little different. Like I say, you're just going to have to figure out which one is what. It's not that hard. It's really not. Now, once you get them all labeled, your instructions will tell you on the new gauge wiring harness where each wire goes. And each harness has the same wiring diagram on it. So each harness plugs into a different gauge. All right, this has a 2-gauge pod. Each set of gauges does different things. So you just have to be careful about which side you're bringing your right signal switch, your right signal indicator versus your left signal indicator. If that makes sense to you. So I'm going to get these soldered together. Yes, we're soldering. We're not using butt connectors. And then I'll get the gauges installed and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Gauges go. These are the original factory gauges. Big clock, fuel gauge, speedometer. These are going to be the new gauges. And you see that each gauge pod has 3 gauges in it. So it's going to clean things up and give the driver all the information that he needs. So here's how it goes in. So first thing you need to do is get rid of your printed circuit board that goes on the back. Like this. Okay. Get rid of all the bulbs that came in the holes. Then you're going to take out these perimeter screws and get each of the gauge is out. Okay, once you remove the perimeter screws, you're just going to reach in here, grab this, and there's that factory clock, and toss that over to the side. And do the same over here. Now your kit's going to come with these drop-in units here. Okay, these rings. This is actually what your gauge sits in, and then your clamp goes over that. This side wasn't a problem. The other side, however, does not want to fit. And what I see is going on here is that these are just stacks of plastic that are glued together. So be prepared to do what I'm about to do. Is take this over to my belt sander and just going to shave a little bit off of here and a little bit off of this side just so it drops in. Now the kit does come with 2 screws to go through here and screw into these holes. Once you do that, then you can mount your gauges. And last but not least, take out the 2 screws, which are going to be here and here, holding in the factory fuel gauge. Then take out these 2 screws down here. And you'll take out the factory trim piece for the fuel gauge. Now the kit comes with a new trim ring. And it also comes with a new filler piece that's going to go where your fuel gauge was. So this is going to go in with the bullseye facing out. Trim ring goes over it. Use the factory screws to put it back in. And something to pay attention to when you're putting in the center piece is that it is offset to one side. So if you look real close, I don't know if it's going to pick up on here, but this side, the plastic trim is much thicker than that side. If you put it in the wrong way, the bullseye is going to be off. Now, when you look at the gauges from the front, the bullseye is perfectly centered. So there you are. There's a tach, fuel gauge, volt gauge, speedometer, temp, oil pressure. Now, put it back in the car, plug it in, see what works. Let you know how it turns out. Alright gang, so now you plug in your gauges, you install them in the car, everything is in. I have a light going between the 2 gauges right here, so if the quality of it is crappy, I apologize about it. So we have the factory bezel in place there. It's not screwed in. You know, I still got the whole dashboard apart. I still got a bunch of stuff to do back here, but getting the gauges in is my main thing. You can see that everything is lit up now. If I turn it off, all the gauges go off. Alright, you know, all the gauges drop down. So we turn it on, and I'm going to turn this light off for a second. As soon as I find the button. So turning the lights on, I got to tell you, it's not as bright as I would like it to be, but it is what it is. The dimmer works properly. We got blinkers. Well, I used to have the left blinker working. I'm not exactly sure what happened there. There we go. Sort of. That's one of the issues I got to work out on this car. High beam switch. That's working. So turn everything back on so you could see. Start the car up. See, the volt gauge jumped right up, so we know we're charging. Tach's working. Got oil pressure. And it's got these little program buttons down here that you can go through and make different selections. Shift RPM, peak RPM, hours that are on the car, on the system. Over here on this side, peak miles per hour, odometer, trip, service intervals, or regular digital speedometer. All in all, I'm pretty happy with the way everything turned out. The installation was actually really easy. The hardest part, like I said, you got to remember, is you have to put in that electronic sender down on the transmission. But it's like any other project, guys. Take your time, follow the directions, use good wiring practices, don't make any shitty connections, and you should have a very successful installation in anything that it does. Anything it is that you do. Okay, so that's going to wrap this up, and we're going to move on to the next project of putting in the custom stereo system. I'm really looking forward to doing that, because that's one step closer to this car going home. Well, if you got any questions, comments, anything like that, leave them down below in the comments. As always, make sure to like, share, tag, and subscribe. Check us out on Facebook over on Jersey Shore Fabricators, and on Instagram, Jersey Shore Fabricators. We always got something going on, and we try to make it cool. Until we see you next time, peace.